The radio hissed with urgency. Any aircraft. Any aircraft. This is SEAL Team 6. We're boxed in by nearly 200 hostiles. Ammunition nearly gone. Casualties mounting. We need close air support right now or we're finished. Major Emily Hayes was cruising at 40,000 FT above a classified zone when the plea broke through. She checked her gauges. Only 12 minutes of fuel left. Below a canyon waited where a single mistake meant scraping into the mountain wall. But 12 Navy SEALs were about to be wiped out unless someone pulled off the impossible. Emily shoved the stick forward, diving straight into danger. Her Gao Avenger cannon loaded with 174 rounds of armor-piercing fury. What happened in the next 8 minutes would be studied in military schools for decades. Meet Major Emily Hayes at 28, 5'6" with a runner's frame, sandy blonde hair tucked in regulation style, and green eyes sharp enough to pick out targets from altitudes that rattled other pilots. She had already proven herself. Emily had flown the A-10 Thunderbolt II, nicknamed the Warthog, for 6 years, logging over 800 combat hours across 3 shadow deployments to regions that didn't officially appear on any map. The A-10 was feared worldwide by anyone staring up its gun barrels. The aircraft was essentially built around the monstrous 7-barrel GAU-8 rotary cannon, spitting depleted uranium rounds at 3,900 per minute. Engines, armor, wings, all of it existed only to get the gun into the fight. And Emily Hayes was among the finest Warthog pilots alive. She had been on a routine patrol over unforgiving mountains in an unnamed sector, covering ground units striking hostile positions. Jagged ridges and deep ravines carved a land so remote that even classified charts labeled it unexplored. It was her 3rd sortie of the day and fuel was running low when the desperate call broke through. Any aircraft, this is SEAL Team 6. Call sign Trident 11. We are surrounded by 200 hostiles. Coordinates classified. We have casualties. Ammo critical. Requesting immediate close air support. I repeat, immediate CAS or we're lost. The voice was calm but heavy, the mark of veterans who'd stared down death before. Yet Emily could still hear the chaos in the background. Gunfire rattling, explosions cracking, men shouting directions and casualty counts. She glanced at her fuel. 12 minutes to bingo. The hard line where she'd have to peel away or risk crashing empty over enemy ground. The SEAL's grid was 40 km northeast through terrain so vicious most pilots avoided it altogether. For her A-10, that was 4 minutes of flight. That would leave 8 minutes to change the outcome between 12 SAS making it out alive or never leaving that valley. Trident 111, this is Hog 27. Emily's voice cut in over the net. I copy your call for close air support. I'm 4 minutes out. State your condition. The reply came back fast. Relief obvious even through clipped radio code. Hog 27, Trident 11. We're pinned in a narrow valley about 200 meters long by 50 wide. Enemies pressing from 3 sides, east, west, south. North side sealed by a vertical cliff. We count 200 fighters with RPGs and 50 caliber guns. 4 casualties, 2 of them critical. Ammunition nearly gone, fewer than 100 rounds left. Emily's brain was already running the math, shaping a plan. A narrow valley meant almost no room for her Warthog to maneuver. Enemy fire on 3 sides meant multiple attack runs from different angles. And with 200 fighters armed with heavy weapons, this would be the riskiest flying of her career. Copy that, Trident 11, can you mark your location? Affirm, Hog 27. Orange smoke going out in 3 and 21 mark. Emily dropped from 40,000 FT to 20,000. Eyes cutting over the terrain below. It was like nothing she had flown over before. Mountains rising like walls, valleys curling like serpents, and stone ridges forming natural strongholds. This was country that devoured armies and left no trace. Then she spotted it. Thin orange smoke curling upward from a valley that looked impossibly narrow even at altitude, wedged between peaks barely charted on any map. She switched channels to the Air Operations Center. Ares Control, this is Hog 27 responding to troops in contact inside unmarked valley grid. Request immediate clearance for danger close fire support. Hog 27, Ares Control, be advised. That valley is unmapped with severe hazards. You are cleared hot, but extreme caution recommended. Bingo fuel 12 minutes. Finish quick, Roger. Ares diving in. Emily shoved the nose down. The A-10 steady and deliberate. Built for toughness, not flash. She armed the GAU, toggled to armor-piercing incendiary, and lined up her attack. At 12,000 FT, the valley opened into full view, and it was worse than she had imagined. Barely 50 meters wide, sheer cliffs rising hundreds of feet, a maze of rock spires, hidden ravines, and sudden drops that made normal attack paths suicidal. Hostiles were dug in on the Reggio lines, pouring fire into the trapped SEALs below. They had chosen perfectly unnatural kill box where escape was hopeless and reinforcements nearly impossible. Trident 1-1, Hog 2-7. Tally on your smoke. Get as low and covered as possible. I'm striking East Ridge first, copy. Hog 2-7, we're flat on the deck. Cleared hot. Emily lined her sights on the eastern ridge where muzzle flashes burned bright. The approach was brutal. Jagged stone columns jutted skyward like nature's own air defenses. She threaded the A-10 between them, a misstep of a few feet meaning wings ripped away. The altimeter dropped. 8,000, 6,000, 4,000 lower than most would ever dare hear. Emily's grip stayed calm on the stick, eyes darting across obstacles, mind calculating distances with machine precision. At 2,000 FT, she pulled the trigger. The Goway thundered alive, a guttural roar echoing through the valley, the kind of sound soldiers prayed to hear. Every second unleashed 65 beer bottle-sized shells, screaming downrange at 3,500 FT per second. The eastern ridge lit up as uranium rounds shredded stone weapons and fighters alike. She held for 3 seconds, 195 rounds, ripping a 100-meter stretch into pure devastation. Rock burst apart, guns vanished, positions erased under the storm. Emily yanked the stick back, the Warthog's wings groaning under brutal G's as she climbed and banked left for another run. A jagged spire whipped past her left wing so close she could see the cracks etched into its face. Hog 2-7, Trident 1-1. Excellent hits on the eastern ridge. Enemies breaking on that side.
Can you hit the west?
Roger, Trident swinging around now. Emily rolled the A-10 into a tight bank, pulling her nose toward the western ridge for another strike. This one was tougher. The ridge pressed closer to the SEAL position, and the terrain was even less forgiving. Natural rock pillars rose like barriers, forcing her into a slalom just to line up a shot. She dropped altitude again, weaving between stone towers that seemed built to shred wings. At 2,500 FT, she caught a clean angle on the western ridge and fired. Another 3-second burst. 195 more rounds of fury tearing into dug-in positions. Through her canopy, she caught the chain reaction. Ammo stores igniting, fuel going up, and the ridge exploding into fire and shrapnel. Direct impact, Hog. You just silenced their heavy weapons on the west, but most of them are massed on the southern side. Emily wasn't finished. One last ridge remained, the south slope, where the bulk of the enemy crowded into cover, shielded by rock that formed a natural maze. This would be the most lethal run of all. She'd have to go even lower. Threading through terrain meant to kill aircraft outright. Trident 11, I've got 5 minutes of fuel. One more pass on the south ridge. Then I'm forced to RTB, make it count, Roger, Hog. South side is their stronghold. Break them there and we'll fight our way out. Emily came in from the north this time, dropping into the valley itself instead of striking from above. It was madness. 350 knots through a canyon barely wide enough for her wings, rock walls closing in like dragon's teeth. The valley twisted hard, forcing left bank, right bank, then left again. Her altitude alarm blared nonstop as she sank below 500 ft. The danger floor for terrain this brutal. Stone walls whipped past so close she could see every jagged edge. But that's what the SS needed. And that's what Emily Hayes delivered. She spotted a narrow gap in the ridge that gave a line on the south slope, an opening scarcely wider than her wings. She had one chance. Emily lined it up, shot through with feet to spare, then pulled sharp just as the southern ridge filled her sights. Fighters waited there, ready to rain fire into the valley, but none expected an A-10 roaring up from below at 400 knots. Emily leveled, nose on target, and squeezed. 3 bursts, 3 seconds each. Nearly 600 rounds unleashed. Every shell found its mark, tearing fighters apart, shredding bunkers and ripping defenses to dust. The southern ridge was erased in firepower. Vehicles erupted into fireballs, hurling debris down into the valley floor. Emily hauled the Warthog out with barely 100 FT to spare. Alarms screaming about terrain, fuel, and a dozen other emergencies born from that insane maneuver. She had just flown through terrain the manuals declared unsurvivable, delivering the strike that flipped an impossible fight. Trident 11, 1 Hog 27. I'm Winchester on gun and Bingo on fuel. I've got to break off. Can you move? The reply came back. Raw relief cutting through the static. Hog 2-7, you just saved 12 lives. Enemies in retreat on all sides. We're moving now. Thank you doesn't come close. Stay safe, Trident. Hog 2-7 RTB. Emily climbed for altitude, turning back toward base, her gauge showing barely enough fuel to limp home if nothing else went wrong. Her grip stayed steady on the stick, though her chest still hammered with adrenaline. After flying the most dangerous run of her career in terrain, no one should have survived. Have you ever done something that terrified you beyond measure? Knowing failure meant lives lost. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being petrified and still doing it anyway. She touched down at the classified forward base with less than 2 minutes of fuel left. As she taxied to her spot, a crowd gathered, odd for a routine patrol return. Once she climbed from the cockpit, she saw why. The commander, Colonel Laura Grant, was waiting with officers and nearly the whole maintenance crew. Her crew chief, Master Sergeant Daniel Vega, stared at the jet like it had defied physics. "Major Hayes, I need to check this airframe for damage. Radio chatter suggested you flew through terrain that should have ripped the wings off." "The A-10's tough, Sergeant," Emily answered. "Ma'am, with respect, it's built to take fire, not to thread stone canyons at 400 knots. A full structural inspection's required." Colonel Grant stepped forward, half admiration, half concern. "Major Hayes, that was some of the most aggressive flying I've ever heard. You just saved a SEAL team with maneuvers that would make test pilots sweat." "Thank you, ma'am. Just doing my job." "That was more than your job, Major. Diving into that unmapped valley at those altitudes. That's the kind of flying that wins medals or wrecks careers. Yours may be both." For the next hour, Emily sat through debrief. Intelligence wanted everything. Altitudes, angles, navigation, enemy placement, damage effects. Footage from her targeting pod was already under review, and hardened pilots shook their heads in disbelief. "Preliminary count shows you dropped about 150 fighters in those runs," the intel officer reported. "Survivors scattered into the hills, letting the SEALs break contact without further losses beyond the initial wounded." "They're wounded. What's the status?" Emily asked. "Medevac lifted them out 30 minutes after you cleared. Both criticals are stable, expected to survive. All 12 SALs are going home because of what you did today." That night, Emily sat in the ready room writing her after-action and struggling to absorb what she had pulled off when the door opened. 12 men in gear stepped in, led by a Navy SEAL commander who looked like he'd just walked through hell. "Major Hayes," he asked. Emily stood. "That's me, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake. C Team 6. My men wanted to meet the pilot who pulled us out today." The 12 SEALs crowded the room, and for the first time Emily felt small among warriors like them. But Blake stepped forward, extending a hand with genuine respect that cut across rank and branch. "We listened to the net while you made those runs," he said. "We heard you flying that canyon at 500 FT, threading stone formations we couldn't even see from the ground. That was the wildest, boldest, most incredible flying any of us have ever witnessed. You went into terrain that kills helicopters and somehow pushed an A-10 through it to save us." Another SA moved up. His name tape read Alvarez. "Ma'am, we've worked with every kind of pilot. Fast jets, rotary wings, drones, but none have flown like you just did. You didn't just drop fire support. You became part of the team, sharing the same risks we faced." "The Warthog's built for that kind of work," Emily answered. A little modest. "Close air support, danger close, troops in contact. That's its purpose. The jet may be built for it." Blake nodded. "But it takes a different breed of pilot to actually dive into terrain like that. Most would have stayed high, safe. You came down into the valley with us. You put yourself in the same danger we were in." Another SEAL spoke. His tape marked Coleman. "Ma'am, when that ambush hit, we thought it was over. 200 fighters, perfect kill box, no exit. We had already made peace with dying there. Then your voice came over the radio and we had hope. When your cannon lit, we knew we were going home. You were caught in that danger because of the mission." Emily said, "I wasn't going to let you face it alone." Blake reached into his vest and pulled something out. A sealed trident pin, the symbol of naval special warfare, one of the most respected badges in the world. "This is from my team. We want you to have it. You earned it today." "I can't take that," Emily said quietly. "I'm not a SEAL. I didn't go through Bud SL or earn it the way you did." "No," Blake said, "but you saved SELs when no one else could. You flew through terrain that should have killed you to bring us back. That makes you one of us. That makes you family. Take it." Emily accepted the pin, her hands unsteady. In the special operations world, respect from SS was the highest honor anyone outside could receive. The trident wasn't just metal. It meant brotherhood, sacrifice, bonds only combat could forge. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me to bring you out. Thank you for being crazy and skilled enough to actually pull it off," Blake grinned. "And you've got a call sign now." The guys all agreed. "We're calling you Valkyrie. The one who decides who lives and dies in battle." Valkyrie, Emily repeated softly, trying the name. Fitz, Alvarez said. You dropped from the sky like a myth and chose life for us instead of death. That's exactly what Valkyries do. 3 days later, Emily was summoned to Colonel Laura Grant's office. She figured it was another debrief or maybe paperwork tied to the mission and the inspection her A-10 had undergone. Instead, sitting behind the desk was a 2-star general she had never met, General Karen Whitfield. The insignia on her uniform showed she was from Air Combat Command Headquarters. Emily snapped to attention. Ma'am, Major Hayes, reporting as ordered. At ease, Major, take a seat. Emily sat, pulse quickening as she wondered what brought a 2-star to a forward operating base that wasn't even on the map. Major Hayes, I've reviewed the gun footage from your mission 3 days ago. I've read the SEAL team's report, the intel summary, Colonel Grant's recommendation, and the inspection results from your aircraft. I also reached out to several seasoned A-10 and test pilots about the scenario you faced. Emily waited, heart thudding. The consensus is clear. What you did was either the most masterful display of close air support flying in modern history, or the most reckless disregard for every safety regulation we have. The engineers who tore down your Warthog found stress fractures in the frame, consistent with maneuvers far beyond design specs. You bent that jet in ways it wasn't meant to bend. Ma'am, General Whitfield raised a hand. Let me finish. You flew at altitudes and through terrain our training manuals outright forbid. You performed maneuvers where doctrine flatly says A-10s cannot operate. By the book, you broke roughly 17 different regulations and could be facing a board of inquiry. Emily's stomach sank, but the general's voice softened. You also saved 12 Navy SEALs from certain death. You wiped out an enemy force that believed themselves untouchable in that terrain. And you showed judgment, skill, and raw courage we strive to instill in every aviator, but almost never see carried out so perfectly under impossible odds. General Whitfield rose and stepped around the desk. Major Hayes, I'm here to tell you that you're being awarded the Air Force Cross for extraordinary heroism in combat against an armed enemy. It's the second highest decoration our service can bestow, and it's being given because your actions redefined what we thought possible. Emily couldn't find her voice. The Air Force Cross was almost mythical, reserved only for the rarest acts of heroism. You're also being promoted to Major, effective immediately. Whitfield continued and reassigned to the A-10 Weapons School at Nellis, where you'll train the next generation of Warthog pilots to provide close air support when doctrine isn't enough. Thank you, ma'am, Emily finally managed. I don't know what else to say. Say you'll keep flying like that when Americans need you, the general answered. Because sometimes the mission demands more than what's safe, what's simple, or what the manual says is possible. You've proved you're one of those pilots, Whitfield said. Now teach others to fly the same way. The promotion ceremony took place 2 days later. Emily's parents flew in from Montana, proud yet shaken after hearing what their daughter had truly done. Her fellow A-10 pilots stood with her along with Colonel Laura Grant, General Karen Whitfield, and the 12 SALs she had saved. As Whitfield pinned the oak leaves of Major on her uniform, Ryan Blake leaned close and whispered, Every SEAL team in theater knows your name now. They call you Valkyrie, and they know if you're overhead when things go bad, they're going home alive. That's one hell of a reputation. The ceremony ended with the formal presentation of the Air Force Cross. As the general read the citation, painting the mission in words that sounded even more impossible than Emily remembered, the weight of it settled onto her shoulders. She hadn't only saved 12 lives. She had proven the A-10, dismissed by some as outdated, could still deliver where no other aircraft could. She showed that close air support wasn't just about weapons or tech. It was about pilots willing to share the risk with the men on the ground. 6 months later, Major Emily Hayes stood before a classroom of veteran A-10 pilots at Nellis. These were experienced aviators, many already blooded in combat, training to become weapons officers, the elite instructors of the force. Today's topic is terrain-denied close air support, Emily began. Specifically, we'll break down a mission in an unmapped valley where a SEAL team was surrounded by 200 enemy fighters and terrain doctrine says fixed-wing aircraft can't survive. She played the gun camera footage from her sortie. The class watched in silence as the video showed the dive into that impossible valley, the weaving through stone spires, the guns flown below safe altitudes, the strikes placed within meters of friendly positions. This mission broke every standard operating rule we have, Emily said when the feed stopped. The altitudes were suicidal. The terrain should have been impassable. The distance to friendlies blew past every safety margin. By normal analysis, it should have ended in failure. She paused, meeting each student's eyes. The 12 SALs are alive because someone tried the impossible when that was the only choice left. Your job as A-10 pilots is to bring close air support to troops under fire. Sometimes that means following the book. Sometimes that means rewriting the book when the old rules don't fit the fight in front of you. A hand went up. Ma'am, how did you know you could push through that terrain without smashing into rock? I didn't know for certain, Emily admitted. I studied it from altitude, calculated the angles I needed, and made the best judgment I could with the information I had. Then I trusted my training, my jet, and my ability to react if something unexpected appeared. What if you'd been wrong? Another student pressed. Then I'd have died, Emily said plainly, and 12 SS would have died with me. But the other option was leaving them to die while I circled safe at altitude. That was unacceptable. A hand rose in the back. Ma'am, how do you know when to take that kind of risk? When to push past the safety lines? Emily thought for a moment before answering. You need to know 3 things without doubt. Your aircraft's limits, your own limits, and the tactical situation. The Warthog can do what no other aircraft can. It was designed to fly low, to absorb punishment, to deliver precise fire where nothing else could survive. But it takes a pilot who understands that, and is willing to use it when lives hang on the line. She brought up a tactical diagram. Let's break the mission down step by step. First run Eastern Ridge. I came in from the west using a rock formation as my landmark for altitude and angle of attack. For the next 4 hours, Emily dissected every moment of that battle. The class scribbled notes furiously, firing off questions about navigation, ammo choice, radio calls, fuel management, and the split-second decisions that meant survival or failure. Yet the true lesson wasn't in numbers or charts. It was in mindset. Being a Warthog pilot meant flying into places that made others turn back, because down below Americans were counting on you when no one else could get through. Over the years, Emily became one of the most respected instructors in Air Force history. Her students didn't just learn tactics, they learned the creed of the Warthog. Success isn't measured by safety margins, but by the lives saved. In her office sat the framed SAL Trident Ryan Blake had given her, next to a photo of the 12 men who had walked away from that unmapped valley. Beneath it hung a line one of her students had taped up. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the judgment that something else matters more than fear. 5 years after that mission, Emily was back in combat, this time leading a flight of A-10s in support of special operations in another region that didn't exist on maps. The profile was familiar. Troops in contact, brutal terrain, desperate need for close fire. Valkyrie lead, this is Phantom 1-1. We're taking fire from elevated positions in rough ground. Request danger. Close support. Emily scanned the ground below. Another valley. More jagged rock. More impossible flying conditions. But this time she wasn't alone. 3 wingmen flew at her side. Pilots she had trained herself. Men and women who had studied her mission and learned what the A-10 could do in the hands of someone who refused to accept impossible. Phantom 111 Valkyrie led. We've got your back. Mark your situation and prepare for support. As she led her flight into yet another valley, that doctrine said no aircraft could survive. Emily thought about the 12 SALs she had saved, the hundreds of students she had trained, and the tradition she carried forward. The A-10 Warthog had been called obsolete, outdated, marked for retirement. But as long as American troops fought on the ground in impossible circumstances, there would always be a need for pilots willing to fly straight into hell to protect them. And as long as aviators like Emily Hayes Valkyrie were willing to push past every limit to bring their people home, the distinctive roar of the GAU-8 cannon would remain the most beautiful sound a soldier could ever hear when death felt certain. If you've ever had to do something that terrified you because someone's life depended on it, remember Emily Hayes. Heroism isn't about never feeling fear. It's about being scared out of your mind and doing it anyway, because the alternative is unthinkable. The pilot who once dove through an unmapped canyon to save 12 SEALs proved that the most vital requirement for any mission isn't in a manual or a spec sheet. It's the will to become more than you thought possible when lives are on the line, and somewhere deep in a valley that isn't marked on any map, there still echoes the most beautiful sound those 12 warriors ever heard. The thunder of salvation delivered by someone who knew some lives are worth any risk. Thanks for watching. This is Old Bill's Tales. Subscribe if you want to hear more incredible stories like this one.